The candlelight flickers in the stone chamber, long shadows moving across the carved faces of Roman statues. Scrolls lie stacked in careful rows. Outside, the echo of sandals on marble fades into silence. You sit at the edge of this ancient stillness, reminded that the most powerful things are often the quietest. You've been living wrong if you haven't learned this from Epictetus, the thought whispers. And suddenly, you remember all those moments you answered too quickly. All the debates that left you hollow. All the noise. Silence is not emptiness. It is a kind of shield. In the Stoic tradition, silence is not avoidance, it is assertion. It is power without performance, and yet you might not endure it. Because silence forces you to confront yourself. It strips away the distractions of justification, defense, and applause. To be quiet while being accused, misunderstood, or challenged, this is the test. And those who pass it are not weak. They are steel under linen. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. To understand this better, let's go back to an ancient lesson from Marcus Aurelius. You walk with him through a quiet Roman corridor. He says nothing, but his presence teaches. You recall one entry in his journal: if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. This is your first invitation to reframe what silence means. It is not submission. It is sovereignty. When someone tries to provoke you, what they really want is your energy, your response, your emotion. But when you respond with silence, they're left holding their own fire and watching it burn alone. Think of all the moments where someone tried to draw you into drama. Did your reply improve the situation? Or did it tangle your peace into their storm? The Stoics believed that silence was not only the absence of speech, but also the removal of inner disturbance. You are not obligated to answer every insult. You are not required to correct every misunderstanding. Most of life's battles are traps disguised as invitations. Marcus often sat through Senate sessions where senators plotted against him. He knew it. He could hear it in their tone, see it in their eyes. But he said nothing, not because he was timid, but because he understood reacting gives away control. Silence chosen wisely keeps it. There is a Roman story told in hushed tones of a general who, after being falsely accused, stood before the emperor and remained utterly silent. When asked why he refused to defend himself, he replied, "If the truth needs me to fight for it, it is too weak a truth." That is not arrogance. It is poise. Scholars still wonder if Stoicism, in its advocacy of restraint, denies the value of righteous anger or assertive justice. But this is the misunderstanding. The Stoic doesn't deny that wrong exists. He simply refuses to let wrong corrupt his own nature. And that's what silence does. It guards your inner citadel. It reminds you that your peace is not a prize to be thrown into every public brawl. It is a garden, and not everyone deserves entry. You remember a time not long ago, standing in a room full of people, someone made a cutting remark, a joke at your expense. You froze, laughed nervously, replayed it in your head for days. That's the thing about disrespect, it echoes. Not because it's loud, but because it finds a hollow inside you that believes it. But what if that hollow wasn't there? What if, like the Stoics, you became a wall that insults cannot pass through? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That means not echoing their tone, not mirroring their behavior, not letting your internal world get pulled into theirs. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it's the refusal to make someone else's chaos your own. You walk with Marcus again, this time through a public square where rumors swirl like dust. A citizen accuses him of injustice. Another spreads lies about his rule. But Marcus does not pause to correct them. His gaze is calm. He listens, then continues walking. This wasn't because he didn't care about truth. It was because he cared more about inner freedom. If every stone thrown required a speech in return, he would never lead, never think, never write, never rest. You think of your own life. How often do you reply just to protect your image? How many of your words are defensive walls built hastily around a wounded ego? What would happen if you didn't? If you let the insult fall to the floor untouched, unclaimed, there is power in the pause. Silence gives you a moment to ask, is this worthy of my energy? Because once you give your energy, you can't take it back. Even if you win the argument, you've lost something more precious, your stillness. And so the Stoic cultivates that pause. Like Epictetus said, when someone irritates you, it is not their insult that disturbs you, but your judgment that it is an insult. That judgment is optional. That irritation is not inevitable. But you must slow down long enough to see it. Scholars debate whether the Stoics were too passive. Shouldn't a person speak up against wrongs? Shouldn't one defend their dignity? But Stoicism doesn't deny the need for speech, it elevates its purpose. Speak when it serves reason. Speak when it uplifts virtue. But do not speak to soothe a bruised ego. You remember another Roman figure, Cato the Younger. In the Senate, he was known for fierce principles, but rare outbursts. His silence in the face of Caesar's manipulations was legendary. Not because he had no reply, but because he measured each word as a weight. Every silence from Cato meant, I am unmoved. And you begin to realize that every time you fall silent in the face of petty attack, you are saying without words, I know who I am. That's what makes it powerful. Silence is the sound of self-possession. So next time you feel your pulse rise, your pride stirring, remember this, you are not obligated to perform. You are allowed to keep your peace, not as a sign of defeat, but as proof that you've already won. You sit quietly now, reflecting on that last moment someone challenged you, not with reason, but with ego. Perhaps they raised their voice, perhaps they laughed behind your back. Maybe it wasn't even direct, just a cold withdrawal of warmth, the sting of being ignored. And yet what stung most wasn't the event. It was your need for approval. Your desire to be seen, heard, understood. That's where Stoicism enters, not to take away your humanity, but to help you reclaim it from others. Seneca once said, "He who does not prevent a wrong when he can is himself to blame." But he also taught that not all wrongs are worth your voice. The challenge is in knowing the difference. And when you do, silence becomes a sword. You don't wield it in malice. You hold it with dignity. Not to harm, but to protect what matters most, your peace. You picture Seneca in his final days, accused unjustly, ordered to take his own life. He did not rage. He did not beg. He wrote farewell letters, drank the poison, bled calmly into the warm water of his final bath. History may debate the politics, but what remains unquestioned is his serenity. A man wronged, but not wrecked. So you ask, how do you get there? How do you become the person who does not flinch when someone throws shade or sarcasm? You start by noticing the itch inside you to respond. You pause not forever, just long enough to realize that the world's judgment is not your mirror, that your worth is not tied to their applause. There's a myth that silence is weakness, that only the strong speak. But the Stoics knew better. It is far easier to speak out of anger than to hold your tongue with clarity. Anger is quick. Silence is earned. You cultivate it like a garden by removing the weeds of insecurity. Scholars sometimes challenge this idea. They ask, doesn't Stoicism risk suppressing healthy emotions? But they miss the nuance. Stoicism doesn't tell you to suppress it, teaches you to select, to choose when emotion serves your values and when it merely disturbs your peace. Epictetus reminded his students, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. You carry this thought like a stone in your pocket, a reminder to feel fully but to act wisely. In practice, this means saying nothing when you're tempted to say too much. It means watching as someone tries to provoke you and offering no reply, not because you have none, but because you've already won the inner argument. You know who you are. You remember a story from Marcus's reign, an advisor who betrayed him for personal gain. The court waited, expecting fury, dismissal, punishment. Marcus remained composed. He reassigned the man quietly without spectacle. Not because he was indifferent, but because he refused to let betrayal become a spectacle. That's leadership. That's power. So now when someone insults you, you don't flinch. You don't rush to prove your worth. You sit in the silence they cannot enter. You become a mountain in their storm. That's not passivity. That's discipline. That's inner sovereignty. Because your dignity is not fragile. It does not require defense. It only requires awareness. And in that awareness, you find something greater than victory peace. The room quiets. The moment passes. And still you've said nothing. Not because you were frozen, but because you were free. You understand now that most of the world is caught in a game of reaction. A game of who can clap back the fastest, who can look the smartest, who can sound the strongest. But in Stoicism, you've discovered another path. One where true strength lies not in overpowering others, but in mastering yourself. If you are irritated by every rub, Seneca once wrote, how will your mirror be polished? The insult, the glare, the muttered remark, they're not interruptions to your peace. They are opportunities to refine it. So you breathe. You return inward. You remember that your emotions are yours, not theirs. And though the world may roar around you, you do not owe it a roar in return. It's the same awareness Marcus Aurelius carried with him as emperor. When the Senate betrayed him with backdoor politics, he didn't respond with outrage. He went back to his journal. His meditations are not filled with fury toward others. They are filled with reminders to himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. You imagine him alone in a candlelit study, quill scratching across papyrus, while the empire's noise buzzes outside. What others saw as detachment, he saw as clarity. He understood to rule others, you must first rule yourself. And so do you. In modern life, where public criticism is instant, where online voices bark louder than truth, you adopt this ancient discipline. You begin to recognize the flash of anxiety when someone misreads you, the fire of ego when someone disagrees. But now you see these not as threats, but as reminders to choose stillness. Scholars sometimes argue, isn't this silence avoidance? Isn't this a form of cowardice? But that question misunderstands the Stoic aim. Stoicism is not escapism. It is confrontation of the self without the noise. It's not silence to run away. It's silence that allows right action to emerge. Sometimes that action will be words. Other times, silence is the action. A deliberate choice not to feed the fire. Not because you're weak, but because you are strong enough not to need the last word. You consider a story from Epictetus, who, though born a slave, rose through philosophy. When insulted by a student mocking his limp, Epictetus didn't protest. He simply said, "If you only knew what I suffer inside." A statement not of self-pity, but of depth. A reminder that we all carry invisible weights, and that silence at times is the highest form of compassion. In today's world, when someone disrespects you, it's tempting to launch 1,000 words in defense. But what if you didn't? What if you let them misunderstand you and moved forward anyway? You realize now silence is not absence. It is presence without noise. It is a way of telling yourself, I am enough, even if they do not understand. And from that presence, you begin to live differently. You speak less. You listen more. You watch the way others try to win arguments while you quietly win your freedom. Because every time you don't respond, you are building something. A quiet kingdom within. A fortress not made of walls, but of awareness. And that fortress, it's where real peace lives. There's a moment quiet but sharp when you begin to understand what silence really is. Not the absence of sound, but the refusal to become part of a storm. Someone mocks you. Someone questions your motives, your worth, your dignity in front of others. And your pulse rises, your lips part slightly, as if on instinct. But then, you pause. You hear Marcus Aurelius whisper from centuries past, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice. And so you close your mouth. Not to be passive, but to be free. You've seen what happens when people defend themselves too soon. Their defenses become cages. They over-explain. They correct every rumor. They go to war with shadows. But you're beginning to see what the Stoics taught, that truth needs no armor. Only ego does. Marcus knew this deeply. Surrounded by political opponents, he didn't flinch when senators schemed or historians misrepresented his rule. He turned again and again to his meditations, not to convince others, but to center himself. He didn't need applause to live rightly. He just needed to act with reason. You walk through your day with this reminder. You listen more than you speak. And when judgment comes, you assess not them, but yourself. Was I virtuous? Was I just? If so, then the criticism is irrelevant. If not, then the insult was a teacher in disguise. If an insult be truth, Seneca said you should thank the man. If it be a lie, you should laugh at him. And there it is, the hinge on which silence swings. You begin to laugh internally, not with mockery, but with clarity. Because you realize that no insult, no matter how loud, can define who you are. Only your actions do. There's an old philosophical tension debated even now: is it more courageous to speak up against disrespect or to endure it in silence? The Stoic answer is both. You speak only when speech serves virtue, and you are silent when speech would serve only your pride. It's not easy. Silence feels unnatural at first, especially in a world where everyone shouts their grievances. But slowly, with practice, you begin to see the reward. The quiet strength of restraint. The pride of self-mastery. The deep, unshakable peace that blooms when you stop trying to win battles that don't matter. You remember a story from Epictetus. When accused falsely, he said, "I have no concern with being thought to be what I am not." He let the accuser speak and walked away. Can you do that? Can you let someone misread you, mock you, underestimate you, and still walk on head high? That's the challenge. That's the invitation of Stoic silence. And so the next time it happens, you're ready. You let them finish. You breathe. You say nothing. Because you have nothing to prove. Because who you are doesn't need an audience. There are words meant to ignite you. You felt it before the sting of passive-aggressive remarks, the smug look followed by veiled insults, the kind of tone that says I'm above you without ever needing to say it outright. And yet here you are, still, quiet, unmoved. Because you now know that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you've stopped playing their game. The Stoics taught that insults say more about the speaker than the subject. Epictetus, who endured a lifetime of servitude before becoming a philosopher, said, "When someone provokes you, realize that it is your own opinion that provokes you. That is, if you believe they've truly harmed you, then they have. But if you don't, not really, then their words are only air." You begin to see how most social aggression is theater, a performance. And what actors fear most is the one in the audience who doesn't react. Now you begin to master your inner theater. You feel the initial flash of defensiveness when you're targeted, but you let it pass like a cold breeze. You don't suppress it harshly. You just let it go unanswered. In the time of Marcus Aurelius, public debates were common. Senators challenged emperors. Intellectuals challenged each other in front of crowds. But Marcus wrote privately to himself not about how to win arguments, but about how to remain untouched. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. Think about that. An emperor, the most powerful man of his time, did not waste his strength on emotional retaliation. And you, in your modern life, walk the same road if you dare. Of course, some people argue this is weakness. That silence lets others dominate. But scholars still debate, is silence surrender, or is it supreme control? The Stoic answer again lies in intention. If your silence stems from fear, it is submission. But if it stems from wisdom, it is power. Seneca once observed, "A sword never kills anybody. It is a tool in the killer's hand." Words, too, are tools. Yours are not to be flung at random. They are reserved for moments when reason, not rage, guides you. You reflect, when was the last time you regretted remaining silent? Likely never. But how many times have you spoken too quickly and wished you hadn't? This is your training now. To notice the moment before the reply. To become fluent in pause. To stand inwardly tall while appearing outwardly calm. You walk through your day like a Roman soldier, patrolling not the city, but the space between stimulus and response. You listen more carefully. You speak more slowly. And each time you choose silence over ego, you feel stronger, less entangled, more free. Even in groups, when others expect you to react, to defend, to counter, your stillness unsettles them. And perhaps that's part of the lesson too. Not all power needs to raise its voice. You begin to notice the ones who talk most are often the most fragile. They seek reassurance through argument. But you've chosen the harder path. The path of the inner fortress. Now you walk into the room and someone scoffs. Their eyes roll just enough for you to notice. A comment is muttered just loud enough. Your name, your work, maybe even your values dismissed with a crooked smile. And yet you don't flinch. Because you've realized something most never do. Their disrespect is their burden, not yours. This is a core Stoic discipline. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And here's what that means for you. The insult isn't in the air, it's in the way you interpret the air. You can choose not to breathe it in. This is hard. Almost impossibly hard, especially for someone who once needed approval, who once twisted themselves to be liked. But you're not seeking applause now. You're seeking alignment with your highest self. As you sit in a group, perhaps at work or among friends, you notice how quickly people react. One raised eyebrow, one skeptical remark, and the spiral begins. But you hold still like a candle that refuses to flicker in wind. And in that pause, you begin to see people for who they are. Some use aggression to mask insecurity. Others confuse rudeness with wit. A few maybe were never taught another way. Your silence is not a lack of reply. It is a depth of observation. The Stoics debated this idea too. How far should we go in tolerating insult? Is forbearance always a virtue, or does it encourage abuse? Marcus Aurelius had the answer, though perhaps not the one we want. He wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." He didn't say to fight. He didn't say to withdraw. He simply said, don't become them, and so you don't. Instead of matching their sarcasm, you choose clarity. Instead of defending your reputation, you strengthen your character. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. This isn't easy. Sometimes silence aches more than words. You'll feel the pressure build your mind, rehearsing the perfect comeback, your pride wounded. But you remember that inner strength is not proven in what you say, it's proven in what you can endure, without needing to say anything. It's tempting to think of silence as absence, but what if it's presence? What if in those moments you are more aware, more whole, more deliberate than anyone else in the room? Seneca believed philosophy was not for show, but for survival. And here in the jungle of human ego, your restraint is your shield. You notice how the dynamic shifts. People stop trying to provoke you, not because they respect you, at least not yet, but because their usual methods don't work on you. You're not playing the game. And eventually, some begin to wonder, why doesn't this person react? What do they know that I don't? That's the gift silence gives you. Space. Clarity. Authority not granted but earned slowly by not stooping to every challenge. You no longer need to prove yourself with every word, because you've already proven it to yourself by needing fewer. You've felt it before, the knot in your chest, after you say too much. The regret of explaining yourself to someone who only wanted to twist your words. The spiral of overthinking. Should I have said it differently? Did I sound weak? Did I lose? But what if you never had to enter that spiral at all? There is power in recognizing that most people don't deserve your explanation, not because they're unworthy, but because they're uninterested in understanding. And Stoicism offers you an exit by not entering. You think back to Epictetus, born a slave, mistreated, mocked, never truly free by society's standards. And yet he once said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. A harsh truth, maybe, but a liberating one. In the face of disrespect, your silence doesn't mean surrender. It means strategy. You're not forfeiting the field, you're refusing to fight battles beneath your purpose. And it's in this quiet that something profound happens. You begin to hear your own thoughts again. In a world that demands instant reactions, your restraint becomes rare. And what is rare is often mistaken for wisdom. People begin to treat you differently, not because you changed your words, but because you changed your energy. Scholars still debate whether Stoic silence was an emotional defense mechanism or a cultivated virtue. But the result is clear. Those who mastered it, like Marcus Aurelius, held peace within chaos. He wrote, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." It's easy to lash out when someone belittles you. It's harder and stronger to look inward and ask, why did that sting me? Was it their words? Or my attachment to how I wish they'd see me? Your greatest pain often lies not in the insult, but in your hope that they wouldn't throw it. And yet here you are, walking past the comment, breathing through the raised voice, choosing calm not because you're indifferent, but because you're intentional. You're learning to stay unmoved, not unfeeling. That's the distinction. Stoicism doesn't make you a stone. It shapes you into a riverbank, enduring even as waves crash. You feel everything and react to almost nothing. You're beginning to understand something most never will. Inner peace is not a byproduct of silence. It's the origin of it. And so you keep going. Not louder, not tougher, just deeper and calmer. Because that's where your real strength has always lived. You step away from the crowd, not because you're afraid, but because you're aware. You know now that not every situation calls for your presence, let alone your words. You've studied the moments when speaking up cost you your peace. You remember how it felt to walk away lighter when you said nothing. This is not avoidance. This is clarity. Silence isn't your shield, it's your signature. Marcus Aurelius once asked himself in his journal, is it possible for a man to be content with what he has and not be disturbed by what others do? You begin to realize he wasn't just asking, he was training. This is how Stoics did their work, not out loud, not for others to see, but inwardly in the quiet workshop of the soul. And that's what you're doing now. You're learning to train your reactions the way a blacksmith trains metal with heat, yes, but also with control. And the most skillful strikes are not always the loudest. Sometimes the absence of noise is the mark of mastery. You ask yourself the harder questions now. Why do you want to speak in this moment? To correct, to defend, to prove. And even deeper, what would happen if you didn't? If you just let the words float past you like smoke over stone. You recall the scene from Seneca's life, a moment in court, where he was accused falsely, insulted openly. All eyes on him, and yet he remained still, lips pressed, gaze unshaken. The silence made more noise than any protest could. People remember not what he said, but what he didn't. That is the paradox of silence, it echoes longer. Scholars still wonder, was Seneca's restraint wisdom or fear, but does it matter? The effect was the same. Dignity preserved, peace intact, audience unsettled by composure they couldn't break. You carry that example with you now. There's someone at work who keeps cutting you off, a friend who forgets to be kind, a stranger who tests your mood with a passing jab. And you say nothing, not from weakness, from wisdom. You begin to notice the more you master silence, the more the world begins to reveal itself. People talk, and their words become like glass, transparent. You hear not just what they say, but why they say it. Their insecurity, their need for control, their craving for validation. And once you see this, it becomes impossible to take their comments personally. What used to feel like disrespect now feels like data. You've become the calm in the storm, not because you don't feel, but because you've trained your mind to choose peace over pride. You're not erasing your voice, you're refining it, saving it for when it actually matters. And when it does matter, when something truly deserves your words, people will stop and listen. Because silence has taught them that when you speak, it's worth hearing. And now you reach the final kind of silence. Not the silence of suppression, where words are swallowed out of fear. Not the silence of pride, where arrogance chooses to rise above. But the silence of serenity, a space you choose with presence for the sake of your own peace. You sit quietly now in the dim glow of a room that asks nothing of you. The voices of the world, chatter, criticism, noise still swirl outside your door. But inside there is calm. Inside you remember something Epictetus once said. If someone speaks ill of you, do not make excuses, but answer, "He was unaware of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned only these." You smile not because it's easy to live like that, but because it's finally making sense. You begin to look at your past with fresh eyes. All the moments where you argued, where you tried to prove yourself, explain yourself, defend your honor. And you see it clearly now, how much energy you spent buying peace with words when you could have kept peace with stillness. There's power in letting go of the need to be understood. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop chasing. You stop giving pieces of yourself away to people who don't value them. You stop explaining your choices to those who haven't earned the right to question them. Marcus Aurelius walked among senators and soldiers, generals and slaves. He carried the weight of an empire, yet journaled every morning as if his only task was to master himself. That's what you do now. You begin to see the daily practice of silence as a form of strength training for the mind, for the soul. Each time you choose silence, you are not avoiding conflict. You are accepting the truth that some conflicts are unworthy of your spirit. Scholars still wonder, how much did Marcus actually say in those Senate meetings? Was he a persuader, or simply a presence too firm to challenge? The truth may never be written, but you know what matters. Presence alone, when grounded in principle, has a gravity that words cannot mimic. And so you continue walking through your days, watching carefully for the impulse to speak. You notice how often it comes not from necessity, but from ego. How often the desire to be right is really the fear of being seen as wrong. You breathe deeper. You pause longer. You choose clarity over reaction. Even now, as you lie down preparing for sleep, you reflect. Not on what you said, but on what you didn't. The insults you let pass. The arguments you didn't join. The gossip you declined. And the dignity that stayed with you because of it. You think of Seneca alone in his final hours, writing words not of revenge, but of calm farewell. Even in the face of death, especially then, he remained loyal to his inner peace. A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions, Marcus wrote. And your ambition now is peace. Not applause, not vengeance. Peace. Let the world say what it wants. Let them guess. You've chosen the kind of silence that does not need to be explained. And now the world gets quieter, not just around you, but within you. The curtain falls not with applause, but with stillness. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. You no longer seek victory in every conversation. You no longer reach for the last word. Instead, you lie back and let the silence speak for you. You hear the rustle of leaves outside, the soft hum of night, the gentle rhythm of your breath. And it is enough. No insult echoes louder than this stillness. No disrespect lasts longer than your calm. They come and go like wind through branches, but you remain unmoved. This is the kind of power they don't teach in schools, the kind you don't find in loud rooms or bright lights. It's in the dark, in the quiet, in the moments where no one else is watching and you still choose peace. So let this be your reminder as you drift towards sleep. You are not small for saying nothing. You are not weak for walking away. You are not lost for refusing to chase applause. You are strong for keeping your peace intact. You are free for not needing the world to agree. And you are wise for knowing that sometimes the greatest act of courage is silence. Sleep well, and carry that stillness with you.